Hi everyone, and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. Welcome also to September's installment of our Life's a Beach crochet series. Can you believe it's September already? And Labor Day weekend is upon us. Now, for September's installment, we are taking you back to Sauble Beach. And that is because I traditionally bookend my summer by going to what I call my happy place. Now, for those of you that didn't see our January installment, that was our first beach location that we visited. So if you want to find out a little bit more background information about this beach, feel free to check out that video. I will leave a link for it in the description box down below. But now, again, we're back at Sauble, and this time we are showing off our Evening Breeze pullover sweater. And this is so appropriate, especially for this location, because really when you go for Labor Day, you just never know what the weather's going to be like. So I've had years where it's still super hot, perfect beach weather. And then there are weekends when there's definitely a breeze that blows in and it's a little bit on the chillier side, or what I like to call cozy weather. But I still do never get enough of this beautiful beach getaway. So in this month's tutorial, we are working on this pullover. It is really easy to do. We're just using single crochet stitches for 95% of the project. However, this tutorial is going to be broken up into 3 parts, and it's just simply because we are using finer yarn. You'll find that it might take you a little bit longer than some of our other previous projects. But I think you'll be really happy with the way it turns out. You just have to hang in there, persevere, and have fun making it. Just think you're going to have your very own pullover sweater. This is really light and breezy as well. So without further ado, let's just head back inside, get all of the materials together, and start stitching up our Evening Breeze pullover.
Okay, so here are the materials you're going to need for your pullover. First things first, the yarn I am using is the Red Hearts It's a Wrap cake, and I have used this already for another project which I absolutely adored. It was the Summertime Tea, and I loved how relaxed it fits. It sits, the stitches are really nice and easy to work with. And this yarn is fantastic for summery type of projects. So for our summer pullover, this was definitely the one I wanted to go to, especially if, you're taking some walks on the beach and you just want something a little bit, maybe it's a little bit crisp at night, just a little something on you, but you don't want it to be super, super hot. So I just love the consistency of this yarn. It comes in a 200-gram cake, and it has 1,100 yards or 1,006 meters. Depending on the size of your top. Now I made a pullover tee with this, and 1 cake was plenty. Now I am going to make sleeves for this project, so I would recommend you get 2 cakes of these. My sizes are generally medium to a large because I make a lot of my top garments very relaxed and loose fit. So that's why I say my sizing is between a medium to a large. If you need a larger size, definitely get the second cake. In fact, because we have sleeves, you're most likely going to need 2 of these cakes. So that will be approximately 400 grams. You may not use the whole 400. This consists of 50% cotton and 50% acrylic. Another reason why I really like it. It's easy to take care of. It is considered a super fine weight 1 yarn. And they are recommending a 3.25 millimeter hook, but we are going to use a slightly different hook, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. And it is machine wash warm, gentle cycle, and do not dry clean. Okay, so it's pretty easy to take care of. So they're recommending a 3.25 millimeter hook, For this project, we're going to be using a 5.5 millimeter hook, also known as an I or a 9. You might be thinking, wow, that's quite a large hook for a super fine weight yarn. I was experimenting a lot with how I wanted the stitches to sit, and I found that when I use the larger hook, it's going to give me just the right amount of breathability with our stitches. And they're super, super simple stitches, and but they're going to create such a really cool look for your pullover. And when I say simple, I mean like super beginner, like single crochets. That's basically it, right? So that's the yarn, that's the hook. And much later on, you'll need a smaller hook to work on all of your finishing touches like your trims and your collars. So the hook I will be using for that is a 3.75 millimeter hook, also known as an F or a size 6. Of course, I always have, I have 2 pairs of scissors. Scissors on hand, of course, always have a trusty darning needle for sewing in your ends. And for this project, anytime I work on garments, I highly recommend having a measuring tape and a piece of paper, a pad and a paper and a pen or pencil. You want to write some information down. So speaking of which, let's talk about the basic structure of this top. Okay, so you're going to see my beautiful artistry skills, which I have none, but I will do my best. So we are going to create a V-neck pullover sweater. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the front panel, the 2 front panels first. You can certainly start with the back panel. It does not matter. So the main body is going to be done in 3 pieces. So because it's a V-neck, I am going to start at the sternum, and we're going to create the length that we need till we get to the bottom of the rim. And then we're going to do some increasing to create that first side panel. Okay, so let's call that panel 1. Once we finish this panel, we're then going to come back. We're going to attach our yarn and then continue. And the reason why we're going to come back is because we're not going to be traditionally working from the bottom and working our way up. We're going to be working horizontally or vertically, I guess you would call it. So we're going to be starting from the sternum, working our way down and going up and down and up and down and up and down. And then we're going to be doing some increases till we get to the edge of our first panel. Then we'll tie off, we'll come back, we'll reattach, and we'll work up and down in the exact same fashion to create the increases on this side until we get the same width. And then we've got our complete front panel done. So this, we'll call this panel 2. As you can see by my artistry skills, they don't even look the same width. They will be the same width. Oh my, that's terrible. So starting in the center, like you might think, well, why don't we start on the side? We'll decrease and then increase. I find, things that are handmade, there's a lot of room for human error. Actually, I should say for human adjustment. Like a lot of times, like as you continuously crochet things, sometimes you'll find that you get extremely relaxed with your gauge. Sometimes you'll get extremely tight with your gauge. So I found that if we start in the center and work our way up with increases and then come back and do the increases again, so don't even think about decreases, I find that you're going to have a much higher chance that these 2 panels will sit exactly the same. Once we've done panel 1 and 2, which technically will be all 1, we're then going to move and do the back panel. So the back panel will be the full, you're going to do the same thing. So, but the difference is instead of starting in the center, we're going to start at one of these sides, and you'll start and you'll chain the same length, however tall it is. I'm just going to do it off to the side here so you can see. And then go right across the full length of this. Again, I'm just doing it offset to give you perspective. And just, it's basically going to be 1 square. So your back panel is just going to be 1 square. So that's panel 3. Okay. It'll be the same length. Just attach that there so you can see. Same length and same with the cross. Super easy. No increases. Nothing is involved. So nice and easy. Then what we're going to do is we have to create our sleeves, and that will be piece 4. And so we'll just, the sleeves for this one will be fairly simple. Just a little panel there, and I'll call these 4 and 4 because you're going to make a replica. They're going to be exactly the same. Then we will attach all of our pieces together so that you'll get a nice pullover, oversized pullover that's going to look like, woo, like this. Okay. So these shoulders here are actually going to sit off because your shoulder is going to come out here because we're making this a bit oversized. So it's going to kind of slouch down. So we're going to make the sleeves nice and narrow there. Okay. Again, I know, gorgeous artistry skills, but hopefully that gives you the basic idea. So what I would do, I always like my V-neck to start right around my sternum, just the top part of my sternum. I'm not really big on showing, like having too much cleavage or stuff like that showing. So, you know, you're still going to get a nice neckline there, you know, fairly, you know, you could call it fairly sexy, but very comfortable for me. So I'm going to take my measurement from my sternum all the way to the bottom. You want to do your initial foundation chain row with this length in mind. So I know for me, based on previous projects that I have worked on, I am going to start with so actually, let me turn it this way. So we're going to start with panel 1. Whoops. And we are starting this way. So we're going to do a chain length that gets us from here to our sternum. And then we're going to chain back down and back up. And then we're going to start doing increases. So I know for me, this length is 16 inches. This is the length that I like. And so it sits just about halfway across my hips. So it'll be perfect for wearing with leggings and things like that. Like I'll feel really comfortable, have some nice coverage. So that's 16 inches or 41 centimeters, okay? So that's the chain length you want to do. So, and then you just keep working your way up there with all your panels. And that's what we're going to start with right now. We're going to get you going. Oh, and I forgot, in case you guys are wondering, the colorway that I'm using is called Western. And I really loved it for this kind of beachy themed project. It's like this cream and sandy color with a bit of gray. I think it's just perfect. And it'll look great actually in all seasons. Okay, so we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook. And I will say that to start off, this is probably going to be the most uncomfortable part of this project because we are using such a large hook for such a fine yarn. But once we get into it a little bit more, it will get easier. Now here is a little trick, and this is going to be opposite to some of the things I have said in the past about your foundation chain row. If you're finding that this is a bit too loose, like I'm going to just do a couple of chains here, like that, you may opt for going down a hook size, like go down to a 5. And I know normally I'll say go up a hook size. The reason why I say that is sometimes it's easy to overcompensate doing loose chains, and then it's a bit too loosey-goosey at the beginning. So, you know, I'm fairly experienced, so I'm very confident in keeping my chains consistent. But, you know, it's an option for you if you're finding you're having a bit of a hard time with that. Okay, so for me, size medium range to large, I am going to do a foundation length that's going to give me 16 inches. For me, that's going to be about 80 chains. Okay, so we're going to do 80 chains. So I've already done 2, 3, 4. Okay, so, and I tend to hold close to the hook so that the chain gauge can stay relatively consistent. Again, this is probably going to be the most frustrating part of creating this top, but hang in there. Once you get past this, it will be smooth sailing, I promise you. Okay, I have done my 80 chains, and you may have noticed I have a different hook. I did indeed go down a hook size, and I went down to a 4.5 millimeter hook, okay? And now I'm going to switch back to my 5.5. Now, for certain projects, you see, I just felt that it gave my chains a little bit more consistency. So I can still kind of work into them, but they weren't too overly loose. Okay, so that's 80 chains. Now for you, if you want your top to be a little bit longer, you might be doing 90 chains. You might even be doing 100 chains. So this is why I love to create my patterns in this way so that you find it completely customizable to you, because not every generic size medium is the same. Especially if you've ever ordered any clothing or garments like off of something like Amazon. You know, you can order a medium in one thing and then you try to order something else and it actually is considered an XXL. So I really want to make sure that people are able to make garments that truly fit them and are very haute couture. So there you go. Okay, I'm back to my 5.5 millimeter hook. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to chain one more. And now we're going to go into the second chain from the hook. So we're going to skip the one we just did. And into that second chain, we're going to insert our hook and just place a single crochet. And this is what we're going to do all the way back up the chain. Now this is probably going to feel the ickiest part of all. See how wide that loop is? Totally normal. Don't panic, okay? So you just go back down the chain, insert into every single chain, and you're just going to place a single crochet. Now I'm keeping them fairly relaxed. I don't actually want them to be super loose. But again, this is a summer pullover, so I want it to be nice and airy and breathable. You know, it's going to look a little bit on the lacy side, which I am super happy with. Nice and breathable, so no worries. And that's it, guys. Single crochet, one into every chain. I'm telling you, you're going to be amazed at how much of a cool project we're going to create with such a very basic, very simple stitch. So I'm just doing my last couple of stitches here. Single crochets, and I have one more right there. Okay, so I'm back down to where I started with my slip knot, and this completes row 1. Okay, so now you can see that you've got a length that looks like this. Sorry guys, my camera is not focusing very well today. There you go. So that's row 1. It's still probably looking like not much of anything right now except just a long chain of, or a long row of single crochets. But you can see by using a larger hook, or maybe you can't see just quite yet, see the stitches just sit a little bit more loosely, which is exactly the texture I'm going for. So let's move on to row 2, okay? And this is what's going to happen with every even numbered row. So 2, 4, 6, 8, all of that. So you're going to chain 1 and turn. And then we're just simply going to continue with our single crochets. Very, very easy. What we want to do though for this project is make sure after we chain 1, notice I did not tighten up there. And you really don't want to tighten up because that will cause your work to bunch in. I just keep it nice and relaxed. I'm going to skip that first stitch and I'm going to go into the second stitch to single crochet. Okay, whoops, make sure to catch both loops there. And I don't want to pull on that chain too tightly. That chain 1 is going to represent the height of your single crochet and will technically count as a stitch there. So see that I kept it nice and loose. And that is all I'm going to do going back up. So the cool thing is now we actually have stitches to work into. Okay, so it's a little bit easier to find and insert your hook. Okay, and again, they're going to be stretching kind of all over the place. So there's my next stitch there. Because we're using a larger hook than is recommended for the yarn, you're going to find that your stitches sometimes will shift a little bit. Do not panic, whatever you do. Just be patient, take your time, and try not to stitch too tightly. Okay? If you're ever unsure, where do I place my hook? Just turn your work a little bit. See that? You can see the V's. Those are the tops of your stitches. And so when you pull your work apart a little bit, you can find there is the stitch you want to go into. So that's it, that's all. One single crochet into each stitch all the way across. At the end of row 2, you will still have, in my case, 80 stitches, or whatever your stitch count was at the beginning. You should still have the same number of stitches at the end. And this is just my last 2 stitches here. So I'm at the end of row 2, and this is where we had that extra chain 1. So I'm just going to make sure to pick up 2 loops there. So this is my 80th stitch. So in this last stitch, so I just placed the 80th one, I'm going to do an increase here. So what I want to do is I want to place 1 more single crochet back into that same stitch. So I'll insert my hook and single crochet. This will give me 81 stitches at the end of row 2. Okay, so all of your even rows are going to be done like this. You're just going to do 1 single crochet. Once you get down to having 1 stitch left, you're going to place 2 stitches into that same previous stitch. Okay. We're now moving on to row 3, which will be the same for all of your odd rows from here on out, which is actually the same as row 1. You're going to make sure that you chain 1 and turn your work. And now you're going to skip that first stitch here. That was where we did the increase. And you're going to go into the second. So we're only increasing at the end of every even row. So when I pull that through, so you might not be able to see it yet, but it's going to start to kind of veer out to create that V. And now you just continue on, business as usual, 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way to the end. And so row 3 will still have, in my case, 81 stitches. And this is basically what you're going to do back and forth. You're going to repeat rows 2 and 3, or even row 1 and 2, 1 and 2, because they're the same. I like to say row 2 and 3 because row 1 was always that first row going into the single crochets. And you're going to keep doing that until you create, so let me just put this down here. So this increase, and you can't see it, sorry, the lighting here is not that great. So this increase is already starting to kind of jut our work out this way. So you're going to keep repeating row 3, then you're going to come back and do row 2 with an increase at the top. Then turn row 3, row 2, row 3, row 2, row 3. And you're going to keep going until your height of your top reaches your shoulders. So remember, we started at the sternum. This is getting all twisted. Let me just grab that and diagram. That'll be a little easier. So we've essentially started here. Okay. And so row 1 went down. Row 2 came up and did an increase. Row 3 is just keeping it the same going down. Then row 4 will come up with an increase. Row 5 just goes straight down. Row 6 has an increase at the end. So the even rows all have increases at the end. So you're going to keep doing as many rows as you need until the full height of your pullover reaches up to your shoulders and you're very happy with the V. Now don't worry if it reaches the height that you like, but you realize, oh, I don't have enough width here. Don't worry about that. That's so easy to fix later on. The most important thing is that you're going to get the comfortable height from your sternum to your shoulders. Okay, so just keep repeating rows 2 and 3 until you get your width. And I will meet you back here when you have finished panel 1. Okay guys, so this is what my V shape looks like, or the slant at the top. And I have reached the height that I am looking for. So I have my 16 inches, whoops, in the center. There's where my sternum will sit, or there's where it meets my sternum here. And this is where it actually sits on top of my shoulder. And it is quite wide, I will say. So if I just bring my little diagram here. So it actually sits, this V here actually sits a little bit more out here. So it's probably going to be a little bit more wider. But again, I want this to be a very loosey, relaxed fit. So I'm quite happy with that. So technically this is the height that I have, and this is the width. So I am now going to continue doing a few more rows to give me a little bit more of that drop shoulder look. Now, currently, this width here, just in case you're curious, is 6 3/4 inches wide. Okay. And for me, I have done a total of 55 rows. Keep in mind, this will depend on your gauge, your tension of how you crochet. For me, again, remember, I'm using that 5.5 millimeter hook with a very thin yarn. So I had 55 rows. That got me from the center up to this angle here. And that's given me 6.75 inches. So I'm probably going to do at least another 2 inches. I mean, this is already kind of at my actual tip of my shoulder. I want it to drop over the shoulder. So I'm going to do at least another 2 inches worth, maybe 3, depending on how I'm liking it. What I am going to do, however, is I'm going to put this on hold for a moment. Now, some people would finish working the whole panel, but my brain kind of works funny sometimes. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this side on hold, and I'm going to come back now in the center, and I'm going to work my other side here. And the reason why I'm doing that before I finish this is I want to make sure that it stays balanced. Anytime we're working lengthwise, I'll call it, the problem is the fact that you're going to have the edges of your rows, and it can kind of change and shift. So before I go all the way to the other side, I want to make sure that I'm going to do the other side, which should end up sitting very similarly to where this one did. Not only that, because we're using a self-striping yarn, I got a second cake because, of course, I knew I would need one for the sleeves. So because I want the center colors, so basically these 2 front panels, I want them to be the same color. Okay, so that's why I went ahead and got the second cake right away, so that I'm going to start again in the center with the cream version, with the cream portion, so that the 2 front panels will have the same coloring. Now, it's totally up to you if you're using a completely solid cake, or if you want it to just stripe on its own, like you could have just done this, whatever color comes up next. But because that's my vision, that is what I'm going to do. So I am actually not going to snip my yarn off here. So I just finished at the bottom. So this is where I ended mine, right here. Okay, I'm not going to snip that off. I'm actually going to start with this color here and work the same number. So now that I know for me, I need 55 rows, I'm going to work that on the other side. So we're aiming for the symmetry on the front, and it's basically going to be the same thing. You're just going to go up 1 row, increase, come back down with no increases. Up 1 row, increase, back down with no increases. So now keep in mind that when we started, we did our foundation chain, which went up first. Then we came back down doing a single crochet with no increases. That was row 1. Then row 2, we made our way back up, and at the end of row 2 is when we did our first increase. So what's going to happen here is, because I've decided that this is going to be the front of my work, I want to make sure that this first row on this side will be the front of the stitches as well. So because we had chained up and worked our way down, we need to start at the bottom here. And I'm just going to start right away and do the first row of single crochets and do my increase there, because the chain would have been already done. So the chain row, or the foundation chain, is going to act as our centering row for this project. Okay, so for the second side, the second panel, I'm going to start where this tail is here. And the first row, I'm going to go up and I am going to increase on the first row and just do a regular one on the second row. So increase on every odd number row. On every even row, we do nothing. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to leave you to do your other side here. And when I've done this second side here, I'll meet back up with you here, and then we'll talk about just finishing off the sides here on our front panel. Okay guys, so I have finished my second side. So now you can really see how the increases have formed our V. So this is what it looks like. I finished the end of my rows. Now you can see what I've done here, which is the next step I'm going to take you guys through, is once I finished the two sides, panel A and panel B, or panel A and panel B, I then went in with my next color that my yarn is striping to. So I did have some of this creamier color left over, but I just wrapped it up and moved on to the next color. It just helps me to control the way my color is looking with this top. Now, just a little something to show you here. Okay, so in the diagram here, we started in the center, we worked increases, then we came here, and then we worked increases on the other side. And so that's the part you should have finished right now, is basically your front panel. And as I said, don't worry if this doesn't cover your full side here, because this is what this other solid color is for, to give you the rest of the width. So for me, when I finished my peak here, for this, I think this just barely kind of covers the side of my breast here as it comes down. I did know I was going to add more rows to create more width, but I wanted to kind of create this funky striped pattern, or chunked color, I should say. So once you've done that, we're tying off, and then we're just going to begin. Now I always like to start mine on the bottom, so all my tails are on the bottom. So I basically started here, and I inserted my yarn, and I just continued doing the same thing that we've done so far. The only difference is we're no longer increasing. So if I can just kind of bring that down a little bit, you can see where that V is. It's curling a bit, but that's okay. So you can see where the slant is, and then for the next chunk, there were no increases. So super easy peasy, just single crochets as you've been doing. And you're going to keep doing as many rows as you need until this really droops, this part droops over your shoulder. So I'm doing mine in a drop shoulder fashion. So this is not meant to be a form-fitting top in the least. Now, in case you're wondering how many rows I have done a total of 32 rows in this darker color. I'll call it like a mocha chocolate color, I guess, for lack of a better word. This is more creamy. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera. More of a cream, and then it's kind of going into a mocha color here. So I did 32 rows. I am now going to go on the other side and do the same thing. And this is what I'm going to show you guys, just in case you need a little bit of help just kind of getting started again with a new color. Okay, so 32 rows on this side, and now I'm going to do 32 rows on that side. That will give me my finished full front panel for this top, okay? So let's just get started real quick. I'm going to get you started on how to introduce that new color. Now, the beautiful thing, because this is a reversible pattern, it doesn't really matter, which side you're facing when you start it. Like I said previously, I like to make sure that all my ends are on one side. It just makes it a little easier later on to kind of tidy up all the loose ends, so to speak. So you can see my end. I ended at the bottom and I began at the bottom. But it looks like what I did there, yeah, I worked over that tail at the beginning. So you can work over your tails at the beginning or you can sew them in at the end. Totally up to you. So you will take your next color. Now again, I happen to be doing color chunking just because of the yarn I have had 3 colors in it. But if you're doing yours completely solid, then you don't even have to worry about this step. So what I would do, actually I should touch on that. If you were not changing colors, once you get this height of your peak here, you would simply continue on, but no longer doing increases at the top. Just FYI, okay? But if you are following along exactly with me, this is how I'm going to do mine. And again, my top would definitely fit between a medium to a large, depending on where you buy clothes, because I just ordered something from Amazon and I ordered an extra large. And, I'm not small by any chance, but when I held it up, I really thought to myself, this is an extra large. Like, I'd hate to see what really, truly large people, what sizes they have to order. So this is why I always work on projects that are, you have to customize it to you. So what may traditionally be a medium might actually be a small or vice versa. So anyway, now I'm babbling. So let's place a slip knot on your hook. Okay. And what we want to do is we now want to find the very last stitch that you worked previously. Okay, so you can see that's where I tied off. So this is another reason why I like starting here. It's so easy to find that last stitch, which will become the first stitch I place my hook into. So I'm just going to insert my hook. Oops. And then you're going to slip stitch to join your yarn. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. So I'm just going to slip through there and then slip stitch. It's a little tricky when you're using a bigger hook for finer yarn. So there we go. So we're in. Now, it's up to you. Like sometimes if I have the opportunity, I just start working over my short tails right off the bat. If it distracts you, you can just weave those in later. So not to worry. In fact, I'll just set that aside so it doesn't distract you guys. So I've slip stitched to join. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 1. Whoops. And I'm going to go back into that same stitch and single crochet. And that is how you're going to begin every single row. Is when you get to the end, you'll chain 1 and turn, and then just go back into the same stitch and single crochet. Now we're just going to go into the next stitch and single crochet. And that's it, guys. You know what to do at this point. You've been doing this forever. Single crochets till your eyes just can't take it anymore. I know this type of project feels like it takes a little bit longer because the stitch we're using is so basic, so simple, and the yarn is so fine, but boy, it is so worth it. When you start seeing the texture of the fabric it creates, it's just lovely. So I really, really like this because it is so lightweight, yet it's still got this warmth to it, and it will give me just the right amount of coziness when I'm strolling on those beachy nights where there's just a little bit of a breeze there. And that's exactly what we're aiming for. So I'm just doing a few here. So you can see, maybe you can't quite see yet, but so the new color is now being incorporated, and that's it. So single crochet all the way to the end. Remember, we do not increase here. So you're going to find the very last stitch, okay? Then you'll chain 1, turn your work, and go right back into the same stitch to single crochet and come back. Exactly what we did here. So if you're unsure, just come back here. So, whoops, I just pulled that out. So for that, I'm just gonna let you go at it. You're off to the races. Pretty straightforward, just single crochets. If you're following me, you're gonna do 32 rows, then you're going to come on your other side and do 32 rows, and your front panel is finished. Once you are done that, I'm going to meet you back here shortly, and we're going to talk about the back panel, which is beyond easy. You're just going to die laughing at how easy the back panel is. It'll probably take me all of maybe 30 seconds to explain it to you guys. All right. In the meantime, do your anchoring rows, I like to call it, on either side, flanking rows on either side, and I'll meet you back to talk about the back panel. Okay, guys, so I have finally finished my full front panel. So it looks something like this. So I've got the cream in the center and that mocha on either two ends there. It's just curling up there in the corner. But you can see where I did not do any increases. It's straightened out, okay? So you're gonna have something that looks like this. Yours might be a little bit bigger. Yours might be smaller, depending on your measurements, of course. So we are now gonna talk about how to create your back panel, which is super easy.